He could buy the entire restaurant. But that night, he could not even make someone understand what he wanted to order. The sentence would have sounded impossible if anyone had said it about Ethan Walker, one of the most successful technology entrepreneurs in the United States. A man whose decisions influenced global markets. A billionaire CEO whose company was valued at more than $30 billion. A person who had spent decades turning complicated problems into simple solutions. Yet inside an elegant Japanese restaurant in downtown Chicago, surrounded by polished wood, soft lighting, and quiet conversations, Ethan Walker found himself facing a problem money could not solve. He sat at a private table near the window, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his luxury watch resting beneath the warm glow of the restaurant lights. Normally, every detail of his life was carefully organized. His schedule was planned weeks in advance. His assistants prepared every meeting. His team handled every challenge before it reached him. But tonight was different. Ethan had come alone. No assistants. No business partners. No one to speak for him. He wanted a quiet dinner after a long week of meetings, a rare moment where he could simply enjoy a traditional Japanese meal without discussing investments, technology, or company strategies. The menu in front of him carried descriptions of regional dishes, each one connected to a different part of Japan's culinary history. Ethan understood the food. He understood the culture. But when he tried to explain his order, the words did not come out the way he intended. The server listened carefully, but confusion slowly appeared on his face. Ethan repeated himself. He tried different phrases. He pointed politely at the menu. Still, something was missing. The meaning behind his words was not reaching the other person. Around him, the restaurant continued as normal. Guests enjoyed their meals. Conversations flowed. Servers moved between tables. But for Ethan, the moment felt strangely unfamiliar. He had built a career around communication. His company created advanced technology designed to help people connect across languages. He had invested millions of dollars into solving communication challenges around the world. Yet here he was, experiencing the exact problem his own company was trying to solve. He was not angry. He was not embarrassed. He was simply reminded of something he had forgotten. Understanding another person was not only about words. A few tables away, Olivia Carter noticed the situation. She was a waitress at the restaurant, wearing a professional black uniform with a clean apron tied neatly around her waist. To most customers, she was someone working quietly in the background. Someone who brought food, answered questions, and made sure guests had a comfortable experience. They saw the apron. They saw the role. They did not see the years of curiosity, learning, and cultural understanding behind her calm expression. Olivia had always been observant. She noticed details other people missed. The hesitation in someone's voice. The difference between frustration and confusion. The small signs that revealed what a person was truly trying to say. As she carried a tray across the dining room, she looked toward Ethan's table again. She recognized the expression on his face. It was not arrogance. It was not impatience. It was the quiet frustration of someone who wanted to connect but could not find the right way. Olivia stopped for a moment. She could have continued walking. It was not her responsibility. Another employee could handle the situation. But she believed every person deserved to feel understood. She placed the tray down at the nearby table and walked toward him. Ethan looked up as she approached. He expected another attempt to explain the order. Instead, Olivia smiled gently and said, "Excuse me, sir. I think I understand what you were trying to say." The billionaire CEO looked at her with surprise. In a room filled with important people, the person who stepped forward was the one most people never noticed. And in that small moment, a man who had spent his life creating connections discovered that the person who would help him understand was someone he never expected. Before that evening, Ethan Walker had spent years building a world where answers arrived before questions became problems. His company was known for speed, innovation, and precision. Inside Walker International Technologies, every challenge had a team assigned to solve it. Every decision had data behind it. Every possible outcome was carefully calculated. That was the world Ethan understood. A world where preparation created control. But outside the walls of his company, life did not always follow a plan. Sometimes the smallest moments revealed the biggest lessons. After Olivia Carter approached his table and offered to help, Ethan watched carefully as she spoke with the restaurant staff in Japanese. Her voice was calm. Her movements were natural. There was no need to impress anyone. She was not trying to prove she was special. She simply understood what he was trying to communicate. Within moments, the confusion disappeared. The order was clear. The problem was solved. But Ethan was not focused on the meal anymore. He was focused on the person standing in front of him. "How did you learn Japanese?" he asked. Olivia smiled as she adjusted the tray in her hands. "I have always been interested in languages," she replied. "I like understanding how people think and how they express themselves." It was a simple answer, but Ethan found it unusual. In his business world, people often explain their skills through achievements, degrees, awards, positions. Olivia described hers through curiosity and connection. She returned to her work shortly after, leaving Ethan sitting at the table with a thought he could not ignore. The woman who helped him did not seem to realize how valuable her ability was. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the headquarters of Walker International Technologies earlier than usual. The building stood in the center of Chicago's business district, a symbol of everything he had created. Employees moved quickly through the lobby. Screens displayed company updates. Meetings filled the schedule. It was a familiar environment. But Ethan felt different. During his first meeting of the day, his team presented updates on their latest communication technology. The project was one of the company's biggest investments. Their goal was to create smarter systems that could help people communicate across languages and cultures. The presentation included impressive numbers, advanced algorithms, and detailed performance reports. Everyone in the room was focused on what the technology could accomplish. But Ethan kept thinking about Olivia's words. Understanding was not only about translating information. It was about understanding people. After the meeting ended, Ethan stayed behind and reviewed the project documents alone. He looked at the research, the charts, and the development plans. Everything was technically impressive, but something felt incomplete. The technology could recognize words. It could process language. It could convert information quickly. But could it recognize emotion? Could it understand hesitation? Could it know when someone needed patience instead of a perfect translation? Those questions followed him throughout the day. Later that afternoon, Ethan returned to the restaurant. He told himself he wanted to thank Olivia properly, but deep down, he wanted to understand her perspective. When he arrived, the restaurant was busy. The same warm lights filled the room. The same quiet conversations surrounded the tables. Olivia was serving customers near the back of the dining area when she noticed him. She looked surprised. "Mr. Walker, is everything okay?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "Everything is fine. I wanted to thank you again." Olivia waved her hand gently. It was a small thing, but Ethan disagreed. "Sometimes small things reveal important truths," he said. That sentence made her pause. For the first time, Ethan asked about her story. Olivia explained that she had always loved languages and cultures. She studied communication whenever she had the opportunity. She spent years learning from people around her, listening to different accents, understanding different traditions, and discovering how much meaning existed beyond words. Her dream had always been to work in international communication. But life had taken unexpected turns. Responsibilities came first. Bills needed to be paid. Family mattered. So she worked as a waitress while continuing to learn whenever she could. Ethan listened quietly. He realized he had spent years searching for talented people in the same places: universities, corporations, and professional networks. But Olivia reminded him that potential did not always arrive with a title or an expensive office. Sometimes it arrived carrying a tray, wearing an apron, and offering help to someone who needed it. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Walker began to wonder how many remarkable people the world had overlooked simply because nobody stopped long enough to see them. Olivia Carter had learned a long time ago that people often noticed what was in front of them before they noticed what was within someone. At the restaurant, customers saw the black uniform, the apron, and the tray in her hands. They saw a waitress moving between tables, making sure everyone had what they needed. But they rarely saw the years of curiosity, discipline, and learning that shaped the person behind that role. For Olivia, helping Ethan Walker that night was not a special achievement. It was simply what she believed people should do for one another. But for Ethan, that small moment opened a door he did not know existed. After their conversation at the restaurant, Ethan began looking at Olivia differently. Not as someone who had helped him place an order, but as someone who understood a problem his own company had been trying to solve for years. Communication was not only about converting words from one language to another, it was about making people feel heard. The next week, Ethan invited Olivia to visit Walker International Technologies. The invitation surprised her. She had expected a thank you, maybe a conversation over coffee. She never expected to walk into one of the most advanced technology companies in the country. When Olivia entered the building, she immediately noticed the difference between her everyday environment and Ethan's world. The lobby was filled with large digital displays showing new inventions. Employees moved quickly between meetings. Engineers discussed complex systems and future projects. Everyone seemed focused on creating the next major breakthrough. Olivia felt like a visitor in a place designed for people with impressive titles and long resumes. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "Do not worry about fitting into this room," he told her. "I invited you because I think this room needs a different perspective." Those words mattered, because Olivia had spent years entering rooms where people judged her before hearing her ideas. She understood that intelligence was often recognized only when it appeared in familiar forms. A degree from a famous university, a leadership position, a professional title. But knowledge did not always announce itself that way. During the meeting, Ethan introduced Olivia to the team working on the company's newest communication platform. The engineers explained the technology behind the system. They showed how quickly it could process languages, recognize patterns, and provide accurate translations. Everyone in the room was impressed by the technical achievements. Then Ethan turned to Olivia. "What do you think?" he asked. For a moment, the room became quiet. Some employees looked uncertain. They respected Ethan's decision, but they did not understand why a waitress was being asked to evaluate a major technology project. Olivia looked at the information on the screen carefully. She did not criticize the work. She did not pretend to know things she did not know. Instead, she asked a simple question. How does the system understand the person using it? The engineers looked at each other. Olivia continued. How does it understand when someone is nervous? When someone is afraid of making a mistake? When someone is trying to connect with another person but does not know the right words? Nobody answered immediately. The question was not technical. It was human. Ethan watched the room carefully. He saw something change. The engineers were no longer only thinking about performance numbers. They were thinking about experiences. They were thinking about real people standing on the other side of their technology. Olivia explained that language carried more than information. It carried emotion, culture, and identity. A person could translate a sentence perfectly and still fail to create understanding. She shared examples from years of serving customers from different backgrounds. She explained how small details changed the way people felt. A greeting, a tone of voice, a moment of patience. These things could make someone feel welcomed. Ethan listened as his team began taking notes. The woman they first saw as a waitress was revealing a perspective they had not considered. Not because she knew more about engineering than they did, but because she understood something they had forgotten. Technology existed for people. And if people did not feel understood, even the most advanced system would remain incomplete. That day, inside a building filled with experts, Olivia Carter proved something Ethan Walker would never forget. The most valuable ideas do not always come from the people everyone expects to lead. Sometimes they come from the person brave enough to see what everyone else missed. The weeks that followed changed the way people inside Walker International Technologies viewed the future of their project. Before Olivia Carter entered the company's world, the team believed they were already close to solving one of the biggest challenges in global communication. They had advanced systems, powerful algorithms, and some of the brightest engineers in the industry. They could process thousands of sentences in seconds. They could recognize different languages and improve translation accuracy. By traditional standards, the technology was impressive. But Olivia had introduced a question nobody had seriously considered. What if communication was not only about understanding words? What if it was about understanding people? That question stayed with Ethan Walker every day. He began noticing details he had ignored for years. During meetings, he paid attention not only to what people said, but how they said it. He noticed when employees hesitated before sharing ideas. He noticed when someone had a different opinion but stayed quiet because they did not want to challenge the room. For a man who built his career around finding solutions, this was a completely different kind of problem. It was not solved with numbers or technology. It required awareness. Inside the company, Olivia slowly became an important part of the development. Process. She never walked into meetings pretending to have every answer. She respected the knowledge of the engineers and understood that building technology required expertise she did not possess. But she also knew that the people creating the technology needed to understand the people who would eventually use it. One afternoon, the team reviewed a new version of the translation system. The developers proudly demonstrated how the software could identify regional differences and provide faster results. Everyone in the room was impressed. Then Olivia looked at the screen and asked, "What happens when someone knows the translation is correct, but they still do not feel understood?" The room became silent. It was not because the question was difficult. It was because nobody had thought about the problem from that perspective. Ethan watched his team carefully. He saw engineers who had spent years studying technology, now looking at communication in a completely new way. Olivia explained that people carried emotions into every conversation. Someone speaking another language might already feel uncertain. Someone using translation technology might worry about making mistakes. Someone entering an unfamiliar culture might need patience more than perfection. These details could not always be measured by software. They had to be understood by people. That was where Olivia's experience became valuable. She had spent years working with customers from different backgrounds. She had seen how a simple gesture could make someone feel comfortable. She had learned that respect was often communicated through small actions. A patient response, a welcoming tone, a willingness to listen. Ethan realized those lessons were exactly what his company needed. He had spent years building systems that could help people communicate faster, but Olivia reminded him that speed was meaningless without connection. The greatest technology in the world could still fail if people felt ignored while using it. Not everyone inside the company accepted the change immediately. Some employees still wondered why someone without a traditional technology background had such influence over a major project. But Ethan understood something they were still learning. Expertise came in many forms. Some people understood machines. Others understood markets. Olivia understood human experiences, and that knowledge was just as important. One evening, Ethan walked through the nearly empty office after everyone had gone home. He stopped in front of the conference room where Olivia had asked her first question. He remembered how different the room felt before she arrived. Everyone had been searching for a technical solution. Nobody had considered the emotional one. Ethan smiled quietly as he realized how much had changed. The person who entered the company wearing a waitress apron had not come to replace experts. She had come to complete the picture. And for the first time, Ethan Walker understood that the future of communication would not be built only by smarter machines. It would be built by people who remembered the importance of understanding one another. The biggest changes inside Walker International Technologies did not happen during a major announcement or a public event. They happened quietly, through hundreds of small conversations that changed the way people thought about their work. Olivia Carter continued arriving at the company with the same calm attitude she had always carried. She did not act like someone who had suddenly entered a world of executives and advanced technology. She did not seek attention. She did not try to prove that she belonged. She simply continued doing what she had always done, observing, listening, and helping people understand each other. That was exactly why Ethan Walker trusted her more every day. He noticed that Olivia had a rare ability. She could enter a complicated discussion filled with technical language and find the human question hidden underneath. While engineers focused on what the system could do, Olivia focused on what people needed. And slowly, the entire team began seeing the difference. One afternoon, Ethan invited Olivia to a strategy meeting with the company's senior leadership team. Around the table sat executives who had spent decades building successful careers. They were experts in finance, engineering, and business development. This was the kind of room where every suggestion was expected to come with data and professional experience. Olivia understood the environment immediately. She knew some people were still wondering why she was there. But she also knew something important. She was not invited because she had a traditional technology background. She was invited because she saw something others had missed. During the meeting, the team discussed the future direction of their communication platform. They wanted to expand the technology globally and make it available to millions of users. The presentation showed impressive statistics. Faster processing, more languages, better accuracy. Everyone agreed the progress was remarkable. Then Olivia looked at the information on the screen and asked, "Have we asked the people using this technology what they are afraid of?" The question surprised the room. An executive leaned forward and asked what she meant. Olivia explained that people did not always avoid communication because they lacked tools. Sometimes they avoided it because they feared being misunderstood. They worried about saying the wrong thing. They worried about being judged because of their accent. They worried about feeling different in a place where they were trying to belong. A person does not only need a translation, Olivia said. Sometimes they need reassurance that their voice matters. Ethan watched as the room became quiet. Not an uncomfortable silence. A thoughtful one. He could see that her words were reaching people in a way that technical reports could not. The executives began discussing new possibilities. They talked about making the technology more welcoming. They considered how design choices could affect emotions, not just performance. For Ethan, this was a powerful moment. Years earlier, he would have measured the success of a meeting by how many decisions were made. Now he measured it by how many new perspectives were discovered. Later that evening, Ethan and Olivia walked through the company's innovation center. Rows of advanced equipment surrounded them. Screens displayed future projects. Employees continued working on ideas that could influence the way people communicated around the world. Ethan looked around and said, "When I started this company, I thought innovation came from creating something nobody had ever seen before." Olivia smiled and asked, "And now?" Ethan paused before answering. "Now I think innovation comes from understanding something people have always needed." Olivia nodded. She knew exactly what he meant. Technology changed constantly. Trends changed. Industries changed. But the desire to be understood remained the same. Over the next several months, Olivia became more involved in the project. She helped the team test new features. She provided feedback from a human perspective. She worked with researchers to understand how different communities might experience the technology. She was not there because Ethan wanted to create an inspiring story. She was there because her knowledge created real value. The same woman who once stood quietly beside a restaurant table was now helping guide the future of a global company. But Olivia never forgot where she came from. She still wore the same confidence she had before anyone knew her name. She still believed every person deserved respect, whether they were sitting in a corner office or carrying a tray through a busy restaurant. And Ethan Walker finally understood the lesson that had been waiting for him from the beginning. The most important voices are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they belong to the people who quietly notice what everyone else overlooks. The relationship between Ethan Walker and Olivia Carter continued to change in ways neither of them expected. What started as a simple moment inside a restaurant had become a turning point that affected an entire company. But for Olivia, the biggest change was not the attention she received. It was the realization that her experiences, the same experiences many people had overlooked for years, could actually help create something meaningful. She had spent so much of her life quietly observing the world around her. Now, for the first time, people were asking her to share what she saw. Inside Walker International Technologies, Olivia became deeply involved in the development of the communication platform. She worked with engineers, researchers, and designers who were learning to approach their project from a different perspective. She did not replace their expertise. She expanded it. The engineers understood technology. Olivia understood the human moments technology needed to support. Together, they began creating something that was not only advanced, but also more thoughtful. One morning, Ethan visited the development team during a testing session. On the screen was a new version of the system designed to improve communication between people from different backgrounds. The team demonstrated how quickly it could translate conversations and recognize different language patterns. Everyone in the room was impressed by the progress. Ethan looked toward Olivia and asked, "What do you think?" Olivia studied the demonstration carefully. She noticed something small that others had missed. The system was accurate, but the experience still felt distant. "It understands the words," she said. "But does it understand the person?" The room became quiet. Ethan smiled slightly because he knew exactly what she meant. The question represented everything Olivia had brought to the company. She was not asking the technology to become more complicated. She was asking it to become more human. Olivia explained that people did not want to feel like they were speaking to a machine. They wanted to feel respected during the conversation. They wanted the confidence that someone on the other side would understand them, even if their words were not perfect. Her ideas influenced the next stage of development. The team began adding features designed around comfort, clarity, and inclusion. They tested the system with different groups of users and listened carefully to their feedback. For Ethan, watching this process was a lesson in leadership. He realized that some of the best ideas in his company did not come from the people with the highest positions. They came from people who experienced the world differently. As the project grew, Olivia also faced moments of uncertainty. There were still people who questioned her role. Some believed that someone without a traditional technology background could not contribute to such an important project. But Olivia never responded with anger or frustration. She responded with patience. She let her work speak for itself. Ethan noticed that quality. In the past, he admired people who moved quickly and confidently. Now he admired people who remained steady when they were underestimated. One evening, Ethan and Olivia sat in a quiet conference room reviewing the progress of the project. Outside the windows, the lights of Chicago filled the city skyline. Ethan looked at the reports and then looked at Olivia. "Do you realize how much this has changed the company?" he asked. Olivia smiled. The company changed because people were willing to listen. That answer stayed with Ethan, because he knew she was right. The biggest transformation had not happened inside the technology. It had happened inside the people creating it. A billionaire CEO who once believed success came from having the best answers had learned the value of asking better questions. A waitress who once stood unnoticed in the background had become a voice that helped shape the future. And together, they proved something that Ethan would carry with him forever. Innovation does not begin when someone builds something new. It begins when someone is willing to see the world in a different way. The final stage of the communication platform was approaching, and Walker International Technologies was preparing for the most important presentation in the company's recent history. Months of research, testing, and collaboration had led to this moment. The project represented more than a new piece of technology. It represented a new way of thinking about how people connected with each other. Inside the company, everyone understood the importance of the presentation. Investors would be watching. Industry leaders would be paying attention. The future direction of the company could be influenced by what happened in that room. For Ethan Walker, the moment carried a different meaning. Years earlier, he would have viewed the presentation as a chance to prove that his company was ahead of everyone else. He would have focused on numbers, achievements, and competition. But now, he saw it differently. He saw it as an opportunity to show what could happen when people with different experiences work together. On the morning of the presentation, Ethan arrived early at the company headquarters. He walked through the office and noticed something he had never paid attention to before. Teams were collaborating more openly. Employees were sharing ideas without hesitation. People who once stayed quiet during meetings were now contributing. The culture of the company had changed, and Ethan knew exactly why. Olivia Carter had never demanded attention. She had never entered the company trying to change everyone around her. She simply showed people a different way to see problems. Before the presentation began, Ethan met Olivia backstage. She looked calm, reviewing her notes one last time. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked. Olivia smiled. "I think the team is ready." Ethan noticed her answer. She did not say she was ready. She said the team was ready. That was Olivia. She always saw success as something created together. When they entered the presentation room, executives, investors, and technology experts filled the seats. Ethan stepped onto the stage first. Everyone expected him to begin with business results and financial achievements. Instead, he started with a story. He talked about a moment when he realized that communication was not only about technology. It was about understanding people. Then he invited Olivia to join him. The room became quiet. Many people knew Ethan Walker. They knew his reputation. They knew his success. But many did not know Olivia. They saw a woman who had once worked as a waitress standing beside one of the most influential CEOs in the technology industry. Olivia looked across the room and began speaking. She did not focus on herself. She focused on the people who would use the technology. She explained that every voice mattered. Every accent carried a story. Every conversation represented a person who wanted to be understood. The audience listened closely. Her message was simple but powerful. Technology could connect the world, but only humanity could make those connections meaningful. After the presentation ended, the response was overwhelming. Investors praised the innovation. Industry leaders recognized the company's unique approach. But the most important reaction came from Ethan's own employees. They understood that the project succeeded because different kinds of intelligence came together. Technical knowledge, business experience, human understanding. All of it mattered. Later that evening, Ethan stood near the office windows looking over the city. He thought about how much had changed since the night he sat alone in that restaurant, unable to express what he wanted. Back then, he believed the solution to every problem was finding the right expert. Now he understood that sometimes the answer came from someone whose value was hidden in plain sight. Olivia Carter had not changed his company by demanding a seat at the table. She changed it by showing everyone why the table needed more voices. And for Ethan Walker, that was the greatest discovery of all. The success of the communication platform changed more than the future of Walker International Technologies. It changed the way people inside the company understood value. For years, the organization had been built around a simple belief: the best solutions came from the most experienced experts in the room. But after working with Olivia Carter, many employees began to see something different. Experience could come from many places. Knowledge could be gained through many journeys. And sometimes, the person with the most important insight was the one nobody expected to hear from. In the months after the presentation, Ethan Walker continued leading the company with a different mindset. He still focused on innovation, growth, and excellence, but he approached leadership in a new way. He spent more time listening to employees. He asked questions before giving answers. He encouraged teams to consider not only what they were building, but who they were building it for. People around him noticed the change. Ethan was still the same ambitious CEO who built a global technology company, but the way he connected with people had evolved. Meanwhile, Olivia continued her work with the company's communication initiatives. She never forgot her original role or the lessons that shaped her. Even as she attended meetings with executives and technology leaders, she remained grounded. She believed the purpose of progress was not to make a few people more successful. It was to make more people feel included. One afternoon, Ethan visited a community center in Chicago where the company was testing the platform with everyday users. He wanted to see the technology outside the corporate environment. He wanted to understand how real people experienced it. Olivia was there speaking with families, students, and community members. Ethan watched from a distance for a moment. He noticed how naturally people trusted her. She did not speak to them like customers. She spoke to them like neighbors. She listened to their concerns. She asked about their experiences. She understood that feedback was not just information. It was a story about someone's life. After the visit, Ethan told Olivia something he had been thinking about for a long time. "When I created this company, I thought my job was to build solutions," he said. "But I think my real responsibility is to understand the problems people actually face." Olivia smiled. That is how solutions become meaningful. Those words reflected the journey they had both experienced. Ethan had learned that leadership was not about having all the answers. Olivia had learned that her perspective could create change far beyond what she imagined. Their paths had started in completely different places. One person built a billion-dollar company. The other person worked behind a restaurant counter. But the difference between them was never about intelligence or potential. It was about opportunity and recognition. Over time, Olivia became a respected voice in conversations about technology and human connection. She spoke at events about the importance of designing tools that considered culture, emotion, and accessibility. She encouraged young people from different backgrounds to believe their experiences had value. Ethan supported those efforts because he knew exactly what could happen when talent was discovered instead of ignored. Years after their first meeting, he still remembered the restaurant table where everything began. He remembered feeling unable to communicate. He remembered the person who stepped forward without hesitation. And he remembered the lesson that followed. The world often looks for greatness in obvious places. It searches in expensive offices, prestigious institutions, and powerful positions. But sometimes greatness appears quietly. Sometimes it wears a simple uniform. Sometimes it arrives with patience, kindness, and the courage to help another person feel understood. Ethan Walker had built technology that could connect millions of people. But Olivia Carter had taught him the most important connection of all, the connection between human beings. Years had passed since the evening when Ethan Walker sat alone at a restaurant table, struggling to communicate a simple request. The world around him had changed, and so had he. Walker International Technologies had grown into one of the most respected companies in the communication technology industry. The platform they created helped people around the world connect across languages and cultures. But whenever Ethan was asked about the company's greatest achievement, he never mentioned the technology first. He always remembered the person who helped him understand why that technology mattered. On a quiet evening in Chicago, Ethan returned to the restaurant where his journey with Olivia Carter began. The same warm lights filled the room. The same wooden tables created the familiar atmosphere. The place looked almost unchanged, but Ethan knew he was not the same person who had walked through those doors years earlier. He sat at the same table near the window and looked around with a small smile. Back then, he had entered the restaurant as a billionaire CEO who believed every problem had a solution if he had enough resources. Now, he understood that some answers could not be purchased. They had to be discovered through humility and connection. A few minutes later, Olivia arrived for her evening shift. She noticed Ethan immediately and smiled. "It has been a long time," she said. Ethan nodded. "It has." They sat together for a few moments and talked about everything that had happened since their first meeting. Olivia had continued working with communities and organizations, helping people understand how technology could serve human needs. She had become a respected voice in the field of communication, but she remained the same person Ethan remembered. She still listened carefully. She still valued every person's story. She still believed kindness was something everyone could offer. Ethan told her about the company's progress. He explained how much the organization had changed because of the ideas she introduced. But Olivia shook her head. "The company changed because people were willing to listen," she said. Ethan smiled because he knew that was true. The greatest transformation had never been about one person. It was about what happened when people stopped judging others by their position and started recognizing their potential. As they talked, Ethan looked around the restaurant. He remembered the moment when he could not make himself understood. He remembered how unusual it felt to need help. But now he saw that moment differently. It was not a weakness. It was an opportunity to learn something important. He had spent years creating technology that translated languages, but Olivia taught him that the most meaningful communication happened when people chose to understand each other. Before leaving, Ethan thanked Olivia once again. She smiled and told him that she had only done what anyone should do when another person needed help. But Ethan knew that simple actions could create powerful changes. Olivia never entered his life trying to become important. She never asked for recognition. She simply offered patience and kindness when it mattered. And that was why her impact lasted. Ethan Walker had built a company worth billions of dollars. He had created products used around the world. He had achieved the success many people dreamed of. But the lesson that shaped him most came from a woman wearing a Waitress apron who reminded him that every person carried value beyond what others could see. Because true success is not measured only by what someone builds or owns. It is measured by how many people they help, feel seen, heard, and respected. And in the end, the greatest connection Ethan ever discovered was not created by technology. It was created by humanity.